Paul did not always do what was right. He was a sinner just like all of us, and he would admit to this truth as well. He knew that he had broken God's law, but even though he knew that he didn't always do what was right, he had always tried to do what he believed was right. He didn't cheat people when he thought he could get away with it. He didn't ignore good things that he felt like God was telling him to do. Even when Paul persecuted Christians, he did it because he thought it was the right thing to do. He lived before God with a good conscience. Obviously, living before God with a good conscience is not the only or even the primary way God would have us to live. We should seek to know the truth about what's right, what pleases God, and do those things, rather than just doing what we think is right. And even then, we need to realize that we're often going to get it wrong. So we need to be humble before God and accept His gift of forgiveness. But there's something to be said about living our lives with a good conscience. It's living the best we know how. It's avoiding the sins that we're aware of. It's not being lazy, not making excuses, but rather living with integrity even when life is difficult. I don't think I can honestly say that I live my life before God with good conscience. I'm often lazy. I often run towards sin rather than away from it. I often know the good I ought to do and fail to do it. And yet because of what Jesus did for me on the cross, my guilt is wiped away. I'm cleansed from all of my sin. And the knowledge of this salvation causes me to want to live that life of integrity. Not because I'm trying to be good enough for heaven, but because God has placed a joy in my heart that makes me want to live for Him with all of my strength. Do you live before God in all good conscience? I don't always do it perfectly. In fact, I rarely do. But I do thank God that His grace is sufficient for me, and that I now have the Holy Spirit to guide me, and to be that good conscience that I've often lacked. God bless you, and see you tomorrow.